Welcome back, Golden family. I'm really excited for today's video.
It's time for a bubble bath.
Now, growing up, I always had a love and passion for eating steak and meats, and I was a really big meat eater. It was like the highlight of the week if we're gonna eat a steak or whatever. Now, I'm sure you've seen all those grill masters out there that have all the fancy equipment and all the fancy techniques. And I thought it'd be nice to show y'all that I'm making steak for my family tomorrow, and we're not gonna be using any fancy equipment, just a man and his meat. With that being said, we're making two beautiful tomahawks. All we need is an oven and a grill pan. And with a couple techniques, we're gonna get a very nice piece of meat. Now with that being said, I'm gonna lay the steaks on a sheet tray, just like this. And we're looking for steak and picking it out. You wanna have a nice marbleization, which means there's a lot of fat within the fibers of the meat. That's why Japanese Wagyu and all that, fancy stuff it's like almost white because there's so much fat content. But these are some, nice tomahawks that I have. And what I like to do is put them on the actual sheet tray. This way the air is gonna actually hit it from the bottom when we put it inside the fridge, and it's gonna dry out the surface. What I like to do is hit them with a bunch of salt. And because this is a very thick piece of meat, I'm gonna go very generous on the salt. We're gonna be doing a dry salt brine in the fridge. And you obviously want to make sure that you season every single portion of it. Now what the salt is going to do overnight is it's going to actually extract the moisture to the surface, and then it's going to reabsorb it. But when it reabsorbs it, it's going to be all those beautiful salty flavor. That way the meat is going to be nice and seasoned up, even though this is a very thick piece of meat. Now I'm going to get both sides of this piece of steak. And again, we're getting very, very generous. I honestly love this method. A long time ago when I discovered it, me and my brother used to always wrap up the steak with paper towel just so the surface gets nice and dry. And then we would season it up with a little bit of salt and toss it into the cast iron, and you get an extremely beautiful crust. Now with these tomahawk steaks, I've actually left them up to 3 days dry brining. They sit in the fridge uncovered and they just dry up the surface. This is just my favorite way of making these kind of steaks. Now we're gonna put these bad boys in the fridge and we're gonna let them sit overnight. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Alrighty, we're back the next day for some updates. Again, especially because these are very thick, you could probably leave them in the fridge for 2 to 4 days. And this method of cooking can be used on any other steak. If I really love somebody and I wanna make them a nice steak, I do this method beforehand instead of just cooking on the spot. So the surface of the steak sort of dried up and you can't really see any of the salt anymore because it just absorbed all that beautiful salt into the meat. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to re-season it or whatever. And you kind of see a little discoloration and dryness, and if you leave it out for like another day or two, it'll like the whole piece of steak will kind of look like this. And it's very important to know that I'm going to keep these on the rack when I put them in the oven. Today we're using my favorite method of cooking, and it's what I love doing on a big piece of meat. We're reverse searing it. Reverse searing it simply means that you cook the inside before the outside of the steak. Now you could do this part on a smoker if you have access to one, or you could even do it on the grill where you put like lighter charcoal on one side and you just cover the grill and let it cook for a longer time. But because I want to show you how to make it at home with no extra equipment, we're just going to use the oven. 250 degrees Fahrenheit until the internal temperature reaches your desired Bro, I can't speak English. 250 degrees internal Fahrenheit until it reaches your desired doneness. I'm going for a medium rare, so I'm gonna pull it out at like 115, 120. Now, a very cheap and easy tool that you can purchase is actually a meat thermometer. If you're still uncomfortable cooking steaks, this is a great tool to help guide you when the steak is actually done cooking. Now, honestly, the more you cook steaks, you could just feel the surface of the steak and know it's doneness. But I'm just gonna show you, obviously for research purposes, we're gonna use this thermometer, and then I'll show you how to check for the doneness after it's done cooking, and what signs to look for throughout. You always wanna gauge the temperature of the thickest part of the steak. So I'm just gonna shove this all the way in. It's like the centerpiece of the steak. And obviously this thermometer is oven proof, and there's a cord obviously so I could see the thermometer on the outside. And there's cordless thermometers if you want to get nice and fancy. When I purchase the steaks, I like to make sure they're the same size and weight so they cook almost the same. Now we're gonna take these into the oven at 250, and typically they take between 30 minutes to an hour depending on how big they are. Now your boy knows how to season his food. But with steak, I'm a big meat lover and I just love the flavor of the actual piece of meat. With that being said, if you want to season steak, we could do it at the end, and I'm going to show you how. What I also like to do is let the steak sit out for like half an hour to an hour, just so it reaches room temperature before we toss it into a hot oven. This way the meat loosens up before it starts to cook. And that is especially important when you're cooking meat on the stovetop. Into the oven we go. Now I know I did say no extra special equipment is needed, but there's 2 pieces of steak and I want to show off just a little bit. I'm going to be searing off one of the steaks on this Korean barbecue attachment, just for fun. I honestly just want to see how it comes out. Okay, so again, I'm testing this method out for the first time. This is like a Korean barbecue grill. It is getting really, really hot, so I'm not going to touch it. Oh yeah, that's hot. It's getting really nice and hot. I got it on max volume, and the whole point is to get a quick sear on the steak, and that's it. Like all we want to do is get some nice color, which is flavor, and it continues cooking it for a little bit. When you put the steak onto any surface, you want to hear a very nice aggressive sizzle. Just keep that in mind. Alrighty, I hope I don't burn the house down. Okay, that was an epic fail. That was truly an epic fail. Alrighty, that's an epic fail. It's not hot enough, and I don't think it's gonna get hot enough. So we're just gonna go back to that old method. And for the other steak, we're gonna be actually using a non-stick because this is the biggest pan that I actually have. Those tomahawks have a really long bone, and we don't want them, you know, hitting the side of the pan. So for like a cast iron or stainless steel, which is usually optimal to use, obviously. Once the steaks are cooked on the inside, the best thing to use is either a grill, a cast iron, or a stainless steel. For the indoors, in my opinion, the best thing is to have those cast iron grill pans that don't have anything on the sides. That's if you're cooking a tomahawk. But when you're cooking just a regular small ribeye steak or New York strip or whatever, you don't need all that fancy stuff. Alrighty, so I kind of pulled out the steaks at my preferred doneness, which is around 110. They're still gray, they're still boring, they look kind of weird. They're nice and soft, the fat rendered down. They're still nice and soft on the inside, and obviously we're gonna cook them again a little bit. So they're gonna continue cooking, and then we're gonna let them rest. So when you press it, it's like really soft, but at the same time, it's not like mushy. If it's mushy, it's way too raw. But yeah, no, the firmer it gets, you know, obviously the more it's cooked. Alrighty, pan's nice and hot. We're gonna go in with a little oil. And then we wanna hear a very nice sizzle. You add a whole bunch of butter. Now to the butter, I'm gonna add a whole lot of garlic. And I like a bunch of lemon pepper. I'm gonna mix this mixture all up just so the garlic cooks just a little bit. And then we're gonna start ladling it onto the actual steak. All right, we give the steak a nice little flip. Ooh. Okay, steak got some beautiful crust on one side. We're just gonna ladle all that garlic and butter and lemon pepper onto the steak. This is what you call basting. So I'm gonna repeat the process with the other steak. I'm just gonna leave out the lemon pepper and garlic. I'm just gonna add a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. Now y'all have to forgive me. I'm in such a big hurry and I'm going to my family's house. That's why I made these steaks for them. Make sure you let them rest for like 10 minutes before you cut them up. And now we have final product. These are gorgeous. Anyone could do them. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Turn on the bell notifications and have yourself a great day. I'm excited for this one. It's time to break my fast.